Sanemi the Survivor. Though most anime watchers only know Sanemi for his violent treatment of Nezuko, there's actually a lot more to the Wind Hashira. In fact, not only did he have a big family with many siblings that he cared deeply about, he was also forced to kill his very own mother to protect them. Now, whether you love or hate Sanemi, we all have to agree on one thing: he is definitely memorable. With this video, we'll get into his life and find out why. During his childhood, Sanemi had a very kind and small mother. His parents had many children, with Sanemi being the eldest of 7. Their mother worked constantly to provide for them with very little sleep. Their father was the opposite, not very helpful and rather unkind. He mostly wasted his days outside doing very little work. Also, when he was at home, he would hit his children. So when Sanemi's mother was around, she tried to take the hits for them. She too was beaten by their father until his actions led him to cross paths with someone who was deplorable like him. Sanemi's father was killed, but neither he nor Genya thought it was undeserved. Sanemi told Genya that they were now in charge of protecting the family since their father was no longer around. They were the oldest children after all. Sanemi smiled when Genya just huffed in response. Because they had already been through so much with their father's treatment of them, Sanemi knew that he could count on Genya to help take care of their younger siblings. Honestly, anyone would have been better than their father if you ask me, but I digress. Life went on peacefully now that their father was out of the picture. But unfortunately, this happiness could not last forever, not with demons in the world. One day their mother did not return at night, which was very uncharacteristic of her. In fact, it was almost dawn and she still had not returned. Sanemi went out to find her on his own, not wanting to endanger the younger children. Even from a young age, it is clear that Sanemi felt responsible for them and would rather risk his own life than let them be hurt. When he was out looking for her, their mother arrived home first, now a vicious, unrecognizable demon. The younger children, too naive, thought Sanemi had returned when they heard a noise at the door, but they were instead attacked by what seemed to be like a rabid beast. With one deadly attack, the children were sliced and left bleeding on the ground, with Genya screaming as he watched helplessly. Because Sanemi had not found her in time, the younger children were slaughtered, with Genya receiving a nasty scar across his nose when he tried to get involved. As Genya watched a wild creature snarl from the ceiling, Sanemi appeared and urged him to run away. And I think he did this because he felt it was too late to save the other siblings and wanted to at least save Genya. Sanemi shoved her outside of their home, away from the rest of the family, as he realized it was too late to save his mother either. Sanemi was about to lose the majority of his family in just a single night, and he fought his mother with the thought that he likely always had in his mind, keeping his younger siblings safe from harm. With that, he had no choice but to fight against her demonic powers and cut her down with his butcher knife. Sanemi ended up covered in both his and her blood, staring at her unmoving body. Afterward, Genya arrived and could not understand what had occurred in his shock. Because the situation was so traumatic, Genya had not realized the snarling monster from earlier was their mother and accused Sanemi of being a murderer rather than his savior. And oh man, this put a strain on their relationship that took years to be repaired, and even then, only when it was almost too late. Sanemi was too stunned to explain, too upset as well, so he simply left. After killing his own mother who had turned into a demon, Sanemi could not see the world in the same way. Life had lost its colors. And just a quick reminder before we get into how Sanemi became a demon slayer, make sure to like and subscribe to Plot Armor to be notified of more demon slayer content like this. Now, there was nothing that brought Sanemi joy anymore. He was alone to wander aimlessly until he decided to fill the void with demon slaying. At first, he wasn't even part of the demon slayer corps. Sanemi hunted demons on his own, a feat most people would be too terrified to do, using his Marechi blood. For demons, Marechi blood is all but irresistible, and Sanemi's was even more so among the Marechi blood carriers. Then, using any and all weapons he could get his hands on, Sanemi captured demons. And it is clear from all his scars that those battles were hard fought since he had not trained just yet. He sliced them down in whatever way he could until they were too weak to fight back, so they would burn up in the sunlight afterwards. Sanemi most definitely risked his life doing this. In fact, he did not care about his life, which is why he did this. He survived only because the demons he encountered were not strong enough to kill him. He never met an upper rank demon in that time. He did, however, encounter a Demon Slayer Corps member, Kumeno Masachika. This man was kind and hardworking and even helped Sanemi begin training to join officially. But this profession did not take too kindly to gentle souls and had a high death rate. That's likely why Sanemi agreed to join, feeling his life did not matter anymore. Eventually, they went on a mission together and encountered lower rank 1, a demon strong enough that they were both struggling during the fight. They successfully killed it, but only Sanemi survived the fight. With a deep sadness that reminded him of the loss of his family, Sanemi watched his friend die in his arms. In many ways, if Masachika had survived, Sanemi would not have been as reckless with his fights that came after because he cared deeply for him like a brother. And Genya was not involved in this aspect of his life yet, so he needed that support. But being the one to survive, only Sanemi was able to be promoted to the rank of Hashira consequently. And with that, Sanemi became the Wind Hashira. And if you think about it, wind can be both gentle as a warm breeze in summer or destructive, like a tornado that rips through houses, much like Sanemi's personality. Afterwards, Sanemi met Kaguya Ubuyashiki for the very first time. And would you believe that his smiling face really got on Sanemi's nerves? How could this man be so happy when so many others suffered around him? Not only that, but Ubuyashiki clearly never fought any demons from the looks of his fragile constitution. And on account of this, Sanemi felt that he had to voice his disgust, which the Stone Hashira Gyome did not appreciate, but the master allowed it. And so with his trademark angered smile, Sanemi went on to accuse Ubuyashiki of sending them out just to be killed without even risking his own life. They were just tools to him, or so he thought. The same soft smile graced the master's lips as he apologized for his illness and being unable to join the cause himself. And Sanemi had nothing to say to his explanation of how weak his body was, how he wished to be a demon slayer too. The kindness that Ubuyashiki showed Sanemi despite his rotten attitude reminded him of the affection he had received from his gentle mother in the past, as Ubuyashiki went on to say that Sanemi need not treat him as above him and instead as an equal. Sanemi continued to be voiceless. When the master then mentioned Sanemi's dear friend who had just passed, Sanemi then knew that he had made an egregious error when judging him. The master knew everyone's names, and even Sanemi only knew a fraction of them. With that, Sanemi received Masachika's will from Ubuyashiki. Within it, he found a message wishing for Sanemi to be safe and content in life. Masachika had considered Sanemi like a younger brother to him, and wished for the very same things as Sanemi wished for Genya in life: peace. Now, similarly to other Hashira, Sanemi is in peak physical condition. He has enhanced speed, strength, and can use the wind-breathing techniques with ease. He carries a basic sword with Destroyer of Demons engraved on it, just as all other Hashiras do. What separates Sanemi from the rest, though, is his body's ability to survive long battles. This comes in very handy when he finally encounters a demon that offers him a challenge, an upper rank. Sanemi can be slashed multiple times, bleeding profusely, and still stop the bleeding and continue on. Additionally, his blood is like catnip for demons. They just cannot resist it, and it is actually more effective the stronger the demon is, which also plays a huge role in his survival later on in the series. Without knowing anything about Tanjiro besides the fact that he travels with a demon, Sanemi has a fully formed opinion of him when he is brought in before the Hashira meeting. Who knew that he would eventually be working alongside him and Nezuko to save the world from Muzan? Sanemi felt that Tanjiro must be a complete idiot to be keeping a demon alive, and as mentioned, this is coming from a man whose whole family was slaughtered at the hand of a demon. The biggest and most important difference between them being that it was not an outside force that caused Sanemi's family to die, it was his own mother. And that's where his actions against Nezuko in Tanjiro's box begin. Sanemi holds her up like a trophy, smiling in a malicious way as he torments her through the box. From Tanjiro's perspective, and Gyu's to an extent, this is beyond cruel. For someone like Sanemi who has never once met a demon worth saving, this is exactly what demons deserve. And despite Tanjiro's pleas, he stabs through her. And for that, he receives a headbutt that catches him off guard, thanks to Gyu mentioning the master arriving. There's an interesting dynamic between Tanjiro and Gyu and Sanemi, and this comes back quite a few times at key moments. At this point though, Gyu already rubs Sanemi the wrong way. Even with a bloodied nose, Sanemi's eyes stay wild and his smile vicious as he plans his next move against Tanjiro and the demon with him. As Ubuyashiki arrives, Sanemi becomes another person, respectful, polite, and quiet. The brash and aggressive tone he was using just a moment ago is long gone. But even while showing the utmost respect to the master, Sanemi has to argue with the decision to allow a demon slayer to fight alongside a demon. Perhaps if Tanjiro was higher ranked and more known to him, he might have been more open to this idea. But Master Ubuyashiki explains that he has allowed it because of a promise made by a former Water Hashira, Orokodaki, and the current Water Hashira, Gyu, but still, that is not enough. Sanemi cannot and will not trust a demon among them, not with what he has lived through. It certainly doesn't help that his brother is in the core as well and could be put in danger. Sanemi lets his anger get the best of him, biting into his lip till the the point of drawing blood. To prove his point, he cuts his arm to let the smell of his rare Morechi blood fill Nezuko's nostrils. No demon can deny the intoxicating scent. He is so bold as to pour his blood onto the box, forcing her to take it in, believing that surely this is where she would show her true colors. He watches her with deep focus as she exits the box, fury in her eyes. And with a quick turn of her head, the demon resists Sanemi's blood. He is shocked, his eyes bulging. Sanemi certainly does not look convinced, but he also cannot force the issue without being rude to the master, whom he respects greatly. And so, at least for now, the subject is dropped. Although Sanemi was not present in the Swordsmith village when it was attacked, he attended the meeting with the other Hashira to discuss the plans moving forward. During the meeting, Sanemi voices his jealousy over having missed the chance to face an upper rank demon. Little does he know, he will have a very rough experience himself in the future. But this also says that even with his hatred of demons and wanting to annihilate them, Sanemi also simply enjoys fighting strong opponents. With Ubuyashiki's illness progressing rapidly, his wife, Amane, takes over the meeting to discuss the topic of Demon Slayer marks. Besides Tanjiro, Mitsuri, and Muichiro were able to manifest them. But Sanemi is shocked to discover that this was known information all along that was withheld from the Hashira, the ones who were supposed to be at the pinnacle of the hierarchy in terms of power. And I agree that they should have been told, regardless of whether or not they would appear or not, although perhaps it was purposefully done to ensure that they would live longer lives. As of course, Ubuyashiki is very much a father figure to the whole lot of them. However, it is explained that before this point it was only thought to be a rumor. The marks were not necessarily an achievable goal, but with more Hashira having gained the mark, Sanemi, along with the others, must now struggle to manifest their own. As Mitsuri tries to explain how hers showed up, it is a confusing mess and Sanemi gives her a side-eyed look. Muichiro's explanation is much clearer, and despite specific requirements needing to be met, Sanemi thinks it sounds really simple. Easy, you could even say. Whether it is difficult or not, Sanemi does achieve that goal during a particularly hard battle later on. Gyu disagrees with it being simple, again pushing Sanemi's buttons with his cold tone. They're also told that once the marks manifest, they will likely die before the age of 25. This is unfortunate as the strongest and eldest of them, Gyome, is already 27 years old, which would imply if he manifests it, he will not have much time left to live. Once Amane leaves the meeting, the Hashira discuss further with each other, but Gyu decides to leave early and says things in a way that makes it sound as if he is above Sanemi and the rest. As Sanemi becomes more frustrated with his lack of explanation, he prepares to fight with him, though it is cut short by Gyome, who halts them with a single move. The meeting then proceeds calmly after that. Later, the Hashira training camp begins, with each Hashira training the lower rank slayers in their specialty. Sanemi's goal is to get the slayers to perform infinite strikes with ease. Not only do they want to strengthen the core by doing this, they also hope that it would help some members, after hours of training with the Hashira, manifest a mark of their own. Although many of the Hashira are intimidating and scary, one of the worst regiments certainly belonged to Sanemi. Zenitsu ran for his life from him, begging Tanjiro to save him from Sanemi. But the Wind Hashira only gives Zenitsu two options: come back to training or die. One that scares Zenitsu even more, Sanemi ends up knocking him out with a chop to the neck, with Tanjiro carrying him back anyway. Sanemi does not hide most of his feelings, although there are some exceptions, so when Tanjiro tries to get acquainted with him, he cuts him off quickly. But Tanjiro agrees that they do not need to like each other, which catches him off guard. Normally we'd expect a fight to start from that, but in a way, Sanemi seemed impressed by Tanjiro's candor instead. The training itself does not require much thinking, simply a lot of stamina and the ability to react in time to avoid Sanemi's fast and endless strikes. He also did not offer much reprieve from his hellish training, unlike some of the other Hashira. But it wasn't just his trainees that he showed no mercy to. His little brother Genya tries to speak with him, and he treated him like a complete stranger. The reasoning behind this is understandable, though we only find out why later on. As Genya continues to try to get through to him, Sanemi begins to lose patience. He even goes as far as to say that Genya has no talent and should quit the Demon Slayer Corps. But the conversation takes a turn for the worse when Genya admits that he ate part of a demon to become stronger. Sanemi takes this about as well as you think he does, especially considering how many family members they lost to demonic abilities. At an unimaginable speed, Sanemi prepares to poke Genya's eyes out when Tanjiro notices and jumps in between the two brothers. Tanjiro pushes Genya out of the way just in time, but even so, Sanemi manages to graze his nails on the skin below Genya's eye. Sanemi admits that he does not want to kill Genya. He just wants to injure him so badly that he cannot recover. The option of quitting the Corps is still available as well. Now, this might just be hindsight talking, but I doubt even if Tanjiro hadn't gotten involved that Sanemi would want to seriously injure Genya. He just really wants wanted to ensure that he could not fight anytime soon and would need to heal and be safe away from the demons. With Tanjiro's persistent involvement in the brothers' spat, Sanemi goes after him instead. Expecting to destroy Tanjiro in one hit, Sanemi gives him an uppercut. He's stunned to see that the younger boy is able to block it from causing too much damage and even gets a decent kick in afterwards. Although it's not as if it does much to Sanemi, who drops Tanjiro like a sack of potatoes. With a lightning fast kick of his own, Sanemi grazes Tanjiro and even that causes him to bleed. But Sanemi's rage is out of control by this point, with no one able to calm him down, and he starts an all-out brawl. Luckily for Tanjiro, his training with Sanemi was put on hold. Who knows what Sanemi would have done to him the next time he'd seen him. Unfortunately, that also meant that Sanemi continued to ignore his younger brother, with no one there to mediate their conversations. After training with the lower rank members is done, Sanemi trains with other Hashira. This is important to keep in mind for later. Surprisingly, he goes up against the water Hashira Gyu. Or maybe he chose him on purpose to prove he is stronger than him. When they both use breathing techniques and break each other's wooden swords, Sanemi starts to get more interested. He suggests that they try bare hand fighting next, but Tanjiro, the ever-nosy boy, misreads the situation and stands between them to keep them from fighting. Sanemi doesn't bother explaining that it's just training. He tells Tanjiro that he is supposed to stay away from him and not get involved. When Tanjiro mentions Sanemi's weakness for sweets, especially ohagi, Sanemi turns murderous again. Sanemi, caught off guard, cannot even deny it. And when Gyu asks if it's true just to get some common ground between them, Sanemi punches Tanjiro to offset his own embarrassment and then leaves. Later, when Sanemi is still annoyed by that situation, he walks through the village and finds a demonic eyeball that was spying on them inside of some tall grass. But it is already too late. Muzan is at Ubuyashiki's home. Previously, the Hashira had offered to guard Ubuyashiki because they felt Muzan or some upper rank demons would be attacking soon. And needless to say, they were absolutely right. Not only has Muzan himself shown up, but he brings all his remaining upper rank demons as well, including the new replacement for Upper Moon 6. Regardless of what came to pass, they all knew the master would never agree. Sanemi thought two Hashira should be guarding him at all times, especially with his ailing health, but it never happened. Having now found this demonic eye though, Sanemi knows without a doubt that Ubuyashiki is in danger. He rushes towards the master, desperate to make it in time. Instead, he arrives to see the home exploding into pieces as his heart did the very same. Sanemi then screams his lungs out, watching the damaged body of Muzan slowly regenerate after the explosion. Once Gyomei reveals that it is Muzan, Sanemi wastes no time before he attacks with wind breathing. But he is stopped short when Muzan opens the floor beneath him and the other Hashira, making them fall into Muzan's infinity castle. After ending up on his own, Sanemi is left with nothing but his own thoughts. And the only thing he can think about is how he did not make it in time. He failed to protect their master. He kneels on the floor, fists on his knees, dazed. Even so, when a demon tries to sneak up and attack, he slashes it without issue. When more arrive, they provide Sanemi with an outlet for his grief. He wears a pained smile, tears sliding down his cheeks as he prepares to kill them all. Because Sanemi considered Ubuyashiki to be akin to a parent like many other Hashira did, this is heartbreaking to see. He could not save his mother, his siblings, his friend, and now his master. When does this guy catch a break? After dispatching the lower level demons, Sanemi comes across an upper rank demon at last, and lo and behold, it is upper rank 1. He definitely got his wish, but you know what they say, be careful what you wish for. This really was not a threat that he could handle, and none of the other demon slayers there could as well. They had to fight as a unit. He arrived just in time to protect his brother Genya with a rising dust storm attack. Too bad Genya is already missing a limb and cut in half at this point, but still. With his usual aggressive smile and crazy-eyed look, Sanemi vows to destroy Kokushibo. But after that, Sanemi does verbally admit that Genya is his brother, unlike in the past when he pretended he did not even know him. Sanemi reminds Genya that he wouldn't have killed their mother if it wasn't for him, that he wants him to survive most of all. He wanted a better life for Genya, away from demons and fighting. As Genya realizes how much Sanemi cares, he begins to cry and apologize, and Sanemi is too affected by this to say or even look at his little brother. We can't imagine that he is tearing up as well though. And I can't lie, the trope of not showing anime characters' faces when they are too upset really gets to me. They are just so tough that they don't want to show any weakness, but just can't hold back. Sanemi's face turns red in anger as he turns his blade to Kokushibo. He draws his blade, swift as the wind in his namesake, sliding between the demon's leg to strike him with an attack. He uses Dust Whirlwind Cutter, a move he previously used against Gyu. It's powerful enough that Kokushibo is forced to draw his own sword in defense, and Sanemi smiles, but it is more hostile than ever before. As Kokushibo begins to use moon breathing, Sanemi realizes that the demon can attack without swinging his sword. Not only that, but from a single attack, he can release multiple complex and unpredictable moves aimed at his opponent. Once Sanemi accepts that a demon like him can use breathing techniques, the battle becomes a challenge worth enjoying. He lets off Clear Storm Wind Tree next. Sure, Sanemi hates demons with a fiery passion, but that does not mean he cannot appreciate a strong opponent when he meets one though, and doesn't wait to use Claw's Purifying Wind. The reason Sanemi's training was so intense is revealed during this fight. His senses are honed to perfection. His attacks can keep up with the upper rank, blocking and dodging deadly attacks. Also, he managed to grab Genya's sword and uses it with his foot, startling even Kokushibo. A swordsman like him only comes around once in a while, and Kokushibo acknowledges that by wanting to push himself even further. And that's just about when it becomes more difficult for Sanemi to keep up. His nose bleeds from trying to focus, worrying the younger slayers. When Kokushibo unleashes a technique he used on a previous Wind Hashira, Sanemi cannot stop it this time. A wall of moon slashes push him back, making him slide across the floor. All the pillars around them are slashed at the same time. Sanemi struggles to catch his breath, blood gushing from his mouth. His eyes cannot even focus on the demon with all the pain and slashes he has received. The cuts are so deep that one wrong move could be fatal to him, but that also works in his favor. Remember that Marechi blood that Nezuko resisted? Well, Kokushibo now faces the very same challenge. Sanemi boasts that his blood is even better than anyone else's, and it is proven with Kokushibo's sudden loss of control, his focus fraying. Not only that, but Sanemi continues to fight despite his extensive wounds. According to Kokushibo, his inside should have fallen out once he moved, but Sanemi fights, using breathing to keep his blood from spilling and tightening his muscles to keep his insides firmly, well, inside. He unleashes Black Wind Mountain Mist, pushing Kokushibo back. However, the more Sanemi strikes Kokushibo and the more impressed he makes the demon, the harder the fight becomes. Kokushibo even manages to step on Sanemi's sword to pin him to the ground, but he fails to notice Sanemi's additional weapon again, this time being Genya's gun. His aim is perfect, but his speed is not enough to reach Kokushibo, who blocks the bullet with his blade. When the fight begins to look hopeless, what with two members incapacitated and Sanemi barely hanging on, Gyomei, the Stone Hashira, joins in. Without argument, Sanemi stitches up his stomach wound as told by the older Hashira, because for as hard-headed as Sanemi seems to be, there are certain people he looks up to and listens to, and it is nice to see that Gyomei is one of them. After letting Gyomei take over against Kokushibo, Sanemi has time to staple his stomach closed in a rudimentary way. He begins breathing hard, making it seem as though he is struggling for air, when actually, the mark starts to manifest on his cheek. Unlike with Muichiro and Tanjiro, his depicts a wind symbol instead of a flame. Kokushibo senses the rise in his power and immediately aims his next attack at Sanemi. As Sanemi avoids it and rushes in, he blocks Gyomei's attack from being seen until the very last moment, both of them moving at high level speeds. They are only able to accomplish this due to the previous Hashira training. They both know each other's movements now. With their teamwork going so well, Kokushibo tries to stop Sanemi first by destroying his sword. Each strike against the side of Sanemi's sword puts it at risk, but also vibrates through his entire body as he tries to keep it in one piece. Sanemi turns his blade to protect it in a flash, his reaction time even faster than a moment ago. Every second he attacks with the mark, Sanemi adapts and quickens his movements. And this time, when he uses Dust Whirlwind Cutter, it has a better effect. Sanemi and Gyomei combine their attacks, with Sanemi using Gale's Sudden Gusts, putting as much pressure on Kokushibo as they can, but it's never that simple. With an impossible to see attack, the two are sliced in multiple places. Sanemi now has a gash on the side of his head. The demon reveals a long sword with multiple points, all covered in the same demonic eyes that Kokushibo has on his face. With the speed of the attack, Sanemi also lost two of his fingers. If it weren't for Gyomei's support in helping him avoid Kokushibo's sword, he would have lost both arms instead. Sanemi worries that his damage is piling on too much, and his blood is starting to lose its effect on Kokushibo. He can't keep holding Gyomei back this way. And although his confidence is waning, Sanemi continues to dodge the attacks as well as he can, but he can't figure out a way to counterattack. After another massive swing of Kokushibo's sword, Sanemi is cut again while dodging, this time on his back as he bent below the moon breathing technique. He tells Gyomei to ignore him and focus on the demon instead. Just then, an inescapable attack crashes towards him, but Muichiro is fast enough to make it to his aid and brings him above above it. With the younger Slayer now involved, Sanemi wants to make sure that he can get to Kokushibo, so he and Gyomei launch and deflect any of the demon's attacks and wait for the right moment. With another catastrophic attack that fills the entire room, Gyomei distracts Kokushibo while Sanemi launches Dust Whirlwind Cutter. Muichiro stabs into the demon and Genya shoots him next using a blood demon art that creates roots around him, and that is thanks to him consuming part of Kokushibo. Sanemi takes that moment to rush in while Kokushibo is trapped, but the demon unleashes a wide-scale attack that launches all of them with blades growing out of his whole body, injuring the younger Slayer severely. Sanemi jumps in for another try as Muichiro struggles to keep his sword planted inside of Kokushibo. As Muichiro's blade turns red and damages him, Sanemi aims for the neck and Genya reactivates his blood demon art. With a final rush, Sanemi roars, knowing that they are close to finishing him off. He strikes his sword against Gyomei's spike flail to ensure the demon's head comes off and it crashes to the floor. Sanemi, shocked that the demon's still not dying, cannot even speak when Gyomei tells him to not let Genya and Muichiro's lives go to waste. His younger brother is dying. He cannot be saved. Sanemi cries and screams at Kokushibo, intent on destroying him no matter what now. With Primary Gale Slash, Sanemi slices up the demon's body, but he still struggles, even headless, to pull out Muichiro's sword from his side. Kokushibo then transforms into a hideous creature beyond what he looked like before, regrowing a head with spiked flesh and fangs. Sanemi, enraged by this, still races towards him along with Gyomei. As his body begins to crumble where Muichiro's blade was, Sanemi and Gyomei end Kokushibo at long last. His body collapses and he turns to dust, but Sanemi does not stop attacking. Even with Gyomei telling him that it is over, he continues swinging his sword. Wanting to end it so much that his body took over, Sanemi is unconscious. Gyomei has to physically lie him down to end his attacking. After a few minutes, Sanemi awakes with a jolt. The first thing he notices is his brother's body slowly disappearing like a demon's. He screams his lungs out, promising he will find a way to help Genya. But Genya begins to apologize for all the trouble he caused, making amends as he knows he will not be alive much longer. Sanemi refuses to hear it because he does not want to think that his little brother is dying before him. As Genya's face falls away piece by piece, he thanks Sanemi for protecting him. He admits that he is glad that he was able to save Sanemi's life in the end. When Genya says that Sanemi is the nicest person in the world, his eyes overflow with tears, on the verge of losing his last family member that he cherished so much. In his final moments, Genya thanks him, and Sanemi tries to hold on to his fading body as the grief rips out of him, and he is left with just Genya's empty clothing. With his back hunched and his spirit crushed, Sanemi does not seem like he wants to leave his brother. Gyomei reminds him that the fight is not over just yet, that there is still Muzan to deal with. With over an hour before sunrise, Sanemi joins the other surviving Hashira to face Muzan when Yushiro manages to get them all out safely outside the Infinity Castle before it collapsed. The final battle is underway. After Gyomei makes a show of swinging his weapon, Sanemi takes that moment to sneak behind Muzan and slice him down his spine. Unlike before, he does not wear a menacing smile. His face is blank and cold with a clear goal in mind. Muzan must die for what he has done. He launches bottles of oil at Muzan, which he slices up easily, but he does not expect Sanemi's match that follows. He sets him on fire with his sword held in his teeth, which definitely reminded me of Zoro from One Piece. Muzan accuses him of using dirty tricks, but Sanemi just wants him dead in any way necessary. At this, Muzan launches monstrous attacks that cover a whole lot of space with little to no room to escape them. Muzan reveals that his attacks were laced with his blood, and so a kind of poison is spreading through all of their systems. Tanjiro's poison advances first, forcing him out of commission. The rest continue in spite of this revelation, with their wounds worsening over time from the poison. When Muzan focuses an attack on Mitsuri and cuts off her arm, the other Hashira rush him, and Obanai brings her to safety. Even with all of them fighting together, they are overwhelmed. Some even lose focus, like Yu, who loses grip over his sword, and Sanemi warns him that he needs to keep his mind in the fight or he will kill him. Somehow Sanemi is both like Bakugo and Levi, rough in speech, but still very caring deep down. He throws Gyu's sword back to him. Sanemi knows that he won't be able to avenge all the fallen people and his brother without all of them focused completely. With blood dripping across Sanemi's face, he still plans to kill Muzan even if he only has his head left to use. But Tamayo and Yushiro's cat appears with vials to reverse the effects of Muzan's poisoned blood. Sanemi grins with renewed vigor as the lump on his face shrinks, glad for the cat that saved him and the rest. Muzan's long appendages attack fiercely, creating craters in the ground with each impact, leaving no room for any Slayer Slayer to approach him. Sanemi dodges away but notices OpenEye losing consciousness and warns him of an incoming attack. They worry it is too late for OpenEye, but unseen allies appear on the battlefield. And with their arrival came talismans from Yushiro to help hide the Slayers from Muzan's view. Sanemi exclaims with delight that using a bright red sword, as OpenEye has, makes it more difficult for Muzan to regenerate. As Gyome launches an attack next, Sanemi tells Gyu to prepare himself as well. He strikes Gyu's sword as strongly as he can and turns both blades red to inflict more damage on Muzan. There is still 1 hour and 3 minutes until dawn. And really, with all this going on, does anyone else think that Orokodaki and Rengoku's father should have joined in, or is that just me? Seeing the papers that Inosuke brought, Sanemi picks one up from off the ground and places it on his forehead to escape Muzan's view, along with his comrades who all cannot be seen without the talisman. Muzan certainly tires of these Slayers' tricks, and when he hears Gyome mention the transparent world, he pushes them all back with a wide-reaching attack, devastating them instantly. Sanemi was launched on top of a building, while the others lost entire limbs. With Kanao being the only one left in front of Muzan, Tanjiro rejoins the fight using Hinokami Kagura and saves her. Now that everyone can barely fight, Tanjiro is their last hope. He intends to perform and connect the 12 forms of sun breathing. To do so, Sanemi and the other Hashira had no choice but to back him up in any way that they can. Yushiro treats them to get them back on their feet. Thankfully, Tamayo's poison that Muzan ingested is also finally kicking in and aging Muzan centuries at a time. Suddenly, as the time until sunrise draws closer, Muzan starts to flee from them. After Muzan releases a monstrous shockwave causing seizures to Tanjiro and OpenEye who were chasing after him, the severely injured Hashira start to make their way to them and lend the last of their strength. It is now only 25 minutes until sunrise. While Tanjiro restarts the process of connecting the 12 sun-breathing forms, Sanemi rushes in and cuts off Muzan's arm to keep him from escaping the spot on the wall where he is pinned, cutting straight down his face afterward. It releases a horrifying view of layers and layers of teeth ready to devour Tanjiro. With the sun coming up over the horizon, Muzan panics and shatters the area around him again. As he begins to disappear, Muzan realizes he has to make himself as large as possible to escape the sun safely. And funnily enough, he turns into a giant demon baby, which suits him perfectly considering how cowardly this escape attempt is. And I know a lot of people thought that this was really stupid when they first saw this transformation, but honestly it makes a whole lot of sense considering how little honor this guy has. As core members drop furniture on him, block his way with a bus, Sanemi comes to their aid with Ida Ten Typhoon from above Muzan. He successfully slices at Muzan's thick limbs to keep him from pushing against the core members. Muzan, still struggling, tries to dig underground, but Sanemi teams up with Gyu once again to attack. This time he strikes with Cold Mountain Wind. The other Hashira who are able to move attack as well, and finally, Muzan burns up and disintegrates with the sun at the cost of too many lives. Sanemi awakens in a dark place, all his lost family members on the other side of the area. To his side, Sanemi sees his mother who is with him, but she can't go to the light like the others have. As she cries with the guilt of taking her own children's lives, Sanemi decides to go with her instead so she will not be alone. At the same time, he knows how sad it would make Genya to see Sanemi joining him in death already. Suddenly his father appears and wrenches Sanemi's mother's hand from his, pushing him away. He tells Sanemi that it is not his time yet, that he is a survivor just like him, and that Sanemi's mother will go with him. Now, why is someone who is attacked by a demon and not in control of their own actions considered just as rotten as a man who knew exactly what he was doing every time he beat his family is beyond me. And so maybe it is just her guilt keeping her from crossing over to the better side. Regardless, it is a bit of a joke that his father says Sanemi is a survivor like him when he was killed by some nameless man. Either way, Sanemi slowly awakens, surprised to be alive, and is still drowsy. He is bandaged from head to toe with a blood transfusion going into him, but he survived. The core members around him hold their heads in relief. So many have died from this once endless battle. Now afterwards, there is a little mishap with Tanjiro being controlled by Muzan for a bit, but that's another video. Check out the one that we have on Tanjiro to see exactly how that went. 3 months later, Kirya Ubuyashiki holds a final Hashira meeting with the two that survived, Sanemi and Gyu. He lets them know that the Demon Slayer Corps is disbanding as Muzan was defeated and no more demons can be created. As the young children bow in respect of their valiant efforts, Sanemi tells them it is not necessary because they wouldn't have lasted this long without the Ubuyashiki family. As Gyu pays Kirya a compliment on his leadership, Sanemi looks on with a soft smile reminiscent of his mother's. He is really calmed down now that the threat of demons is gone. While Sanemi visits the recovering Slayers, he bumps into Nezuko in the hall. He is a bit awkward at first considering he was so hard on her the first time they met, and I guess it's hard to blame him considering his past demon encounters. He also apologizes for not being of any help when Muzan tried to take over Tanjiro's body, looking down in guilt. Nezuko's forgiveness and bright mood dispel the uncomfortable situation right away, and she really reminds him of his dear younger brother Genya so much. He pats her on the head gently with a smile, wishing her well, and you know he means it. Now, after a long period of time has passed and the Demon Slayers are all but a myth, we see Sanemi's descendant in the present. He is shown as a cop who has to deal with annoying kids leaping over his car on their way to school. Now, Genya, though long deceased, has reincarnated and is his partner on the Force as the brothers are reunited once more. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.